Good evening, and welcome back to another episode of Raven Investigates Still Unsolved Mysteries. Tonight, we actually won't be going very far in our travels. We're going to be heading a bit north from the Raven's Nest to the city of Powhattan, Kansas, and looking into a case of a soon-to-be mother that had her life and future stolen from her. This case is one that has no real answers, and the technicality of an entire Native American tribe being suspect in the murder. Tonight, we will be investigating the unsolved murder of Jodie Lynn Bordeaux. The Kickapoo Reservation, home of the Kickapoo Native American tribe, is a 5-mile by 6-mile large reservation approximately 5 miles west of Horton, Kansas, located in Powhattan. This reservation, like most others in the United States, is run by an elected governing body known to this tribe as the Kickapoo Tribal Council. As of October of 2018, the total membership of the tribe was approximately 1,610. Today's case takes us back a couple decades to the mid to late 90s. The Bordeaux family, at the time made up of Sean and Jodie Lynn Bordeaux, lived in this small farmhouse on the reservation. Both of them worked for the Kickapoo-owned Golden Eagle Casino. Sean, who was part Lakota, and Jodie were both part of the management team. It was their job to oversee and direct the everyday dealings of the casino. It should be noted that, while Sean was part Native American, albeit Lakota, based on everything I could find, Jodie was not. It's also important to note that, at one point, Jodie was promoted to staff supervisor of the slot machine department. She was given authority to oversee the employees' performance and file reports about their behavior. While they both had some authority, every major decision made had to go through the Kickapoo Tribal Council. If an employee's behavior didn't improve, Jodie had the authority to bring them before the council for either probation or termination. As stated before, the Bordeaux family was, at the time, solely Sean and Jodie. However, they were trying to have a child. After a number of failed pregnancies, and after meeting with a fertility expert extensively, everything finally worked out for the two of them, and Jodie became pregnant with a baby girl. Now, I know that some of this information I've mentioned so far may feel like it isn't relevant or is superfluous to this case, but in one way or another, it does all relate to what happened. As stated, part of Jodie's job was to report on employee behavior and bring them in front of the council if their performance did not improve. There was one employee that was listed as often being tardy, having a bad attitude, and also having a personal disgust with the fact that Jodie had a high position at the casino. He was also known to have accused her of making up excuses to get out of work. All of this information was reported to the council by Jodie. The council decided that the employee would be put on a probationary period and told to clean up his act if he wanted to keep his job. Unfortunately, the message apparently did not get through to him. He continued to be tardy and aggressive. Because of this, the council opted to fire him. A few weeks later, in an obvious move of retaliation, he filed a grievance against Jodie, claiming that she had been consistently late to work. Sean, Jodie's husband, attempted to refute the claim that she was just simply not showing up on time. He informed the council that she had been going to the fertility clinic as they were trying to have a family, and that she was staying later in the afternoon to make up for the time lost at the beginning of the shift. Despite this, the council opted to fire her as a result of said grievance. Over the next month, Jodie petitioned the council to get her job back. During one of the meetings, it was agreed that they would consider giving it back to her, but it would need to be discussed further. Not too long after this decision, the family started receiving disturbing and threatening anonymous phone calls where the caller would just hang up. From there, we move forward to the night of November 21st, 1997. Sean and Jodie were in their living room in the middle of the night having a fairly standard evening. Suddenly, they started to hear their dog barking at something they couldn't see, and then started hearing a strange noise outside. Immediately after, the house was riddled with bullets. The two of them got out of the living room in an attempt to escape the gunfire. It is stated by Sean that Jodie got to the bedroom door before he did, stopped, turned around to see if he was okay, and was then struck in the head with one of the rounds. From here, Sean has stated that he immediately knew that Jodie was dead, but still called 911 in an attempt to try to save their unborn daughter. Unfortunately, there was nothing that could be done, and this case became a double homicide. The police came to the scene and investigated, but very little progress has been made. It's believed by officials that there were multiple shooters, and they have identified a number of suspects, but the case has been hit with one major roadblock: the lack of trust between the Kickapoo tribe and the non-Native American law enforcement. There's also an internal fear throughout the tribe that if anyone is to speak up and help law enforcement in this case, they will face retribution. Unfortunately, due to the aforementioned statement, there isn't much in ways of extra information on this case. Apparently, Jodie was good at her job, but not very well respected in her position. A number of people that worked at the casino refused to see her as a superior, and they didn't believe that she should hold a high position at the casino, seeing as how she was not part of the tribe. When she was being reconsidered for the position, apparently that information spread throughout the reservation very quickly and everyone was aware of it. Obviously, the most likely speculation is that Jodie's murder had something to do with her employment. There were 3 suspects officially, one of which was the disgruntled employee, but it's firmly believed that there were multiple people involved. On top of this, when Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack did their segment on this case, a number of people on the reservation refused to do interviews because they had received threatening phone calls basically telling them not to go on the show. Apparently, Sean and Jodie had contacted the police a few times prior to report suspicious activity outside of their home, which would have most likely been the attackers casing the house, but nothing ever came of it. Despite this, when he called 911 after the shooting, the 911 operator claimed ignorance to his location, and he had to repeatedly tell them where he was. This led to a significant delay in the emergency services getting to the scene. Approximately 15 minutes had passed between him contacting 911 and them actually arriving. In addition to this, Sean has stated that the police handled the crime scene in the wrong way. He said they had left his wife's body in the house well into the next day, and that he was shut out for over 4 days. When he was finally allowed back into the house, he and his grandfather went in and did a smudging, a Native American ritual used for spiritual cleansing and blessing, and then packed his belongings. Sean also attempted to get the FBI involved on this case, but they immediately refused to touch it due to jurisdiction issues. Interestingly enough, the farmhouse they lived in was technically just outside the actual reservation by around half a mile. In addition to Sean's request, several former Kickapoo leaders actually sent a letter to the U.S. Attorney General requesting assistance in this investigation. Lastly, and most interesting, this is not the only unsolved murder on this reservation. I don't have any additional information on those other cases at this point in time, but there were supposedly at least 2 other unsolved murders on this reservation that have also been met with the previously stated roadblocks. This case actually goes the opposite direction from most cases that I cover on this series, whenever it comes to suspects. I actually have to say that it has too many suspects to just point one out and say that's possible. There comes a point where, when you have an outsider working in a position of power in one of the tribe's most lucrative businesses, there's going to be animosity. We know of one specific case of animosity against Jodie, and that's the employee that was fired due to her reports. The officials have also stated they have 2 other suspects in mind, but there's not enough evidence to even give names on who they are, and no arrests have ever been made. With the fact that there were most likely multiple shooters, and that there were a number of people that did not like Jodie, technically, anyone in the tribe that was an adult at the time of her murder could be considered a suspect. This statement puts literally everybody investigating this at an obvious disadvantage. The people responsible have the tribe protecting them, and they're also open to threatening people with violence if they even think about talking about it. This is interestingly both my shortest and technically longest list of suspects. Anyone from the angered employee to everyone complacent in hiding the crime is a suspect. Disclaimer. This is my opinion, solely my opinion only. It is not your opinion. It is not necessarily a popular opinion, nor an unpopular opinion. It is solely the opinion of As the Raven Dreams. My opinion on this case is simple, and is one that you may likely agree with as well. That employee that was fired wanted revenge. He started with trying to ruin her life by getting her fired. Then, when she was being reconsidered for the job, he opted to end her life in the most gruesome way imaginable. This was, in my honest opinion, a professional hit on someone that members of the tribe saw as an outsider overstepping their bounds. I believe the official statement that there were multiple shooters and that this was plotted out for a while. The attack was too well orchestrated, and with the number of rounds shot into the house, there's no way the intent was just to scare her or Sean. They entered the property with the intention to kill anyone and everyone in that house. In the nearly 23 years since he lost both his wife and unborn daughter, Sean has moved back to his hometown in the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota, where he's actually a member of the South Dakota House of Representatives. He's moved on with his life as best he can, making the most of his time, but the pain of this loss is still obvious. And it's amplified even more by those that remain silent about what they know. It's a sad truth, but one spoken all too often when looking at unsolved mysteries. We will likely never know who murdered Jodie Bordeaux. I know this is one of my shortest episodes, and I'm sorry for that, but this case is one that needs to be covered, in my opinion, but there's not a lot of information out there. Obviously, the document in my description does have my sources, and I do implore you to please go check those out. But just know, the roadblocks in the Kickapoo tribe that have absolutely silenced people who want to speak about this case are very, very real. You can't find information about what happened. Nobody has spoken since it happened. It's basically just investigating silence at this point. I am very sorry to Sean for his loss, and unfortunately, and I'm sure he knows this as well, being Native American and living on a reservation, it's highly likely that nothing will ever come of this case. The people who are protecting the murderers are, unfortunately, complacent in doing so. It may be a thing of protecting people of the tribe, it may be they feel threatened, but it's still a situation of complacency. Again, it's really unfortunate that this case won't ever have an answer, or if it does have an answer, the people who are hiding the information will have to have passed away. All that said, and I do have to ask, what do you guys think? Do you think this was an orchestrated hit on the family? Or do you think this was one disgruntled employee that took revenge? Or do you maybe have your own theories on what may have happened? Have you researched this case? Have you looked into it? And have you established information that I didn't cover? If so, let me know in the comments or send me an email. If you want to email me, it's astheravendreams@outlook.com. I'll see you on the next episode of Raven Investigates. The next one will be longer, I promise. Just know that I wanted to cover this case because, one, it's in Kansas, and two, it's one that doesn't have much info. So maybe I can get your minds going and thinking about it and potentially researching more. Alright, guys. I'll see you on the next Raven Investigates, but until then, this is Raven signing off. Sleep well.